Hey everybody, welcome back to TechOdyssey. So today I'm here with a 72-hour impressions video of the new LG V60 ThinQ 5G. I know it's a little exaggerated whenever you get into the title of the phone, but really, the V60 is a pretty fantastic device. I know it's kind of polarizing, and it's funny, there's so many fans out there for Apple, there's so many fans out there for Samsung. There's not as many fans out there for LG. They still are a very big name brand phone manufacturer, and they every year compete. They bring their A game, and this time, it's their V60 game. And there are some curious decisions that they made, of course, but at the end of the day, I still think that it's a really solid phone. There's a lot of stuff it brings to the table that I like. There's a lot of extraneous stuff that they left out on the side, but that's reflected in the price really well, I think. So before we dive into the specifics on talking about the V60, I do want to say that if this is your first time stopping by the channel, I appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates on the latest videos when they come out. Now, let's go ahead and spend some time talking about the LG V60 ThinQ 5G. Alright, so here we are with the LG V60. I've got the dual screen attachment on here right now, but of course the phone is a solitary unit. You can buy the additional screen for $100 extra whenever you pick it up, either through T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, wherever. So there's really three things that I want to address in this video. One, how much does it cost? Because people want to know what's it cost. I mean, phones are so expensive nowadays. It's nice to know before you waste your time watching the video how much it costs. The second thing I want to talk about is what are some of the specs and the features that it has going for it. And the third thing I want to talk about is it worth it? So from a buyer's perspective, a situation that even I find myself in a lot of times nowadays, those are really the things that I kind of want to know. So I want to translate those over to you in this video that I'm going to go ahead and do now. All right, so talking about price. Now, the standalone phone, just the LG V60, cost $799, which I happen to think is a pretty good deal, especially considering it has a 6.8-inch OLED panel. It's running a Snapdragon 865. You got 5,000 milliamp battery. It has a lot of things going for it. The S20, which has a much smaller screen, is rocking many of the same specs, but it costs $999. So there's a $200 difference there just for the smallest level of the S20 lineup, and it's $1,099 if you want to get the S20 Plus, and of course it's $1,399 if you want to get the Ultra. So pretty big price disparity there between the two phones. Now, if you want the dual screen, it's $100 extra. Now, one other thing I need to note, the Verizon price is different because it has a different antenna in it, which is capable of the more powerful 5G network that Verizon has deployed already in some areas. So it's $899 at T-Mobile and AT&T if you get the dual screen model, and then if you get it with Verizon, it's $949. So even with the dual screen, whether on Verizon or the other phones, it's still cheaper than the single phone that you get with Samsung in the S20. So comparatively speaking, I think that the price is pretty solid for what it brings to the table. All right, so I like specs. Not everybody else likes specs, so I'm not going to spend too much time in this area, but it is running the latest Snapdragon 865 processor, which is capable of 5G. It will also shoot 8K at 30 frames per second. You can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second on the front or rear camera. So it's more than capable whenever it comes to being able to do whatever it is that you want it to do. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is more than enough. And one of the arguments when it comes to RAM, people say, well, the Samsung one has 12 gigabytes, especially if you get the Ultra model. Do I need that much RAM? Some phones have 10 gigabytes. If you're not using all the RAM, it doesn't matter how much you have. You could have 6 gigabytes or you could have 12 gigabytes. If the operating system and what you're using doesn't take up that space, then it doesn't make your phone run any faster. So 8 gigabytes is perfectly fine, especially at the $799 or $899 price point, which is what most people are going to end up paying. Now, it does have a 5,000 milliamp battery, which is tremendous because the phone does have a beautiful 6.8-inch display that's locked in at 1080p instead of QuadHD Plus. Now, some people do say that since it is supposed to be a larger flagship phone, it should ideally have a QuadHD Plus display, which is pretty much what every other flagship phone runs. Yes, but you're also getting a second display if you decide to go ahead and pick that up. Now, when you talk about a 5,000 milliamp battery, that's insanely big for a normal phone. That'll get you through more than one day. It'll get me through a day, and I can normally kill a phone by 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening if I try, hard enough. So having a 5,000 milliamp battery is great, but when you're sharing it across 2 screens, that's an extra display that you have to power. And depending on how you use those displays can greatly vary in the amount of battery that it's going to use. So things that suck your battery down are having a QuadHD plus resolution, having a 90 or 120 hertz refresh rate, things like that. So whenever you have it at 1080p at the normal 60 frames per second, you're able to save some more battery, and that's great because you also have the identical displays on here, so you're powering it across 2 screens. So you need to make sure that it's able to run them properly. So I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing, especially since they're coming in significantly lower than their competition. I mean, the iPhone 11 Pro runs $999, the Pro Max is $1099, and then we already talked about the S20 series, which start at $999, $1099, and $1399. So I think that for what you're getting is perfectly fine. And the whole 90 and 120 hertz argument is great. You can't even tell that much of a difference for most people, and not trying to insult anyone, but unless you have a 60 hertz, 90 hertz, and 20 hertz refresh rate screen next to each other, there really isn't that much of a noticeable difference. And after you use the phone for a day or two, you kind of get used to it. So unless you go to 120 hertz or 90 hertz and then go back, you're really not going to notice much of a difference. It's really not worth the extra money, and it saves you on the battery. So I think that most people are going to care more about having a second screen than they are being able to have a little bit smoother scrolling or a little bit smoother, less motion blur when they're playing games, because quite honestly, a ton of people don't play high intensity games that have a bunch of motion blur anyway. So they are nice. I really do enjoy the 90 and 120 hertz displays, but I don't notice it or miss it at all whenever I switch over and I use the LG V60, and I have a S20 Ultra that I use regularly. So coming from my experience and my perspective, it's really not that big of a deal. All right, so another thing that I want to talk about is the dual screen setup. Now, if you get the dual screen, great. I highly encourage it because you can always have the option, especially at $100. There's a lot of times where I really like the dual screen. There are certain times I don't like the dual screen. It's not ideal for texting and making phone calls. You pretty much can't use the phone unless you open up the second screen. Now, it's really nice having the notifications on the front. It's wonderful, but you have to open up the phone to get to anything. Then you don't have facial recognition. So you go ahead and use your fingerprint sensor there, which is fine. It opens everything up. But then when you're trying to, send text messages and make phone calls and stuff like that, it just doesn't work out that well because you're sitting here trying to type on your phone, and the entire screen over here is in the way. So you can use this, you can use your right thumb, or you can't even reach over with the other hand, and it's fine if you want to go ahead and open the screen up like that. It works well, but like I highlighted, the screen on the back, I looked online, there's not really any good alternatives for screen protectors that are out there right now. Nothing that I wanted to spend my money on. So you have to worry about scratching up the back screen, which is a concern. And then 2, it's just kind of clunky and in the way. And another thing is when you open up the second screen like this, it is very difficult to reach these buttons back over here. You're kind of fishing around in the dark trying to hit them. So that's another concern. But being able to use both of the screens independently is really, really nice. So you can play a game on one screen. You can run Twitter on one screen. You can have the internet browser open on one. You can have YouTube open on the other. So there's so many different possibilities and different combinations that allow you to do a lot. It gives you some real flexibility when it comes to using the phone. The other thing that's nice is you can split, you can stretch it out and you can use both screens at the same time. Now, this is very limited. There's not a whole lot of applications that support it, but if it does support it, it's kind of neat. It's a novel thing. You have to get used to watching with that big bar in the middle, but other than that, it's not that big of a deal. Now, the other thing is, it's nice to be able to play games on here. So you can flip the screen up like this, and then you can use the top screen for playing games, and then they have the LG gamepad. Now, it's not compatible with all apps. Some of them it does work natively with, like Fortnite, and I think one of the Asphalt games and a few other ones. You can set up other controllers in there to work with the customization to set it up on there, but natively only a few games work with this. So that's kind of the limitation. I tried using it with like Call of Duty and I couldn't get it to work with the pre-set up controller, but I fired it up on Fortnite and it works. So that's another nice thing. And it's cool because you have the controller down on the bottom and then you have the screen up on the top. It frees up your eyes, it frees up your hands, and it makes it kind of like playing on a gigantic Nintendo DS, to where you have that gigantic screen up there. Of course, it has stereo speakers, and the stereo speakers, they sound good too. So I think that that's really nice. If you're a Fortnite player, this is the phone for you, because not only can you play the game, you get the simulated gamepad, but you also have the 5,000 milliamp battery. Works like a champ. Now, talking about the cameras, I was able to go out and take a few picture samples. It turned out pretty good. I really like the selfie camera. I really like the regular camera. The wide angle lens is something that LG's been known for. They brought it out first with the LG G5. Takes some really capable pictures. Works out nice. So I really like the crisp and sharp detail. I like the natural colors. I really appreciate that it's not oversaturated like what Samsung does with their phones, which of course have these radiant and beautiful displays, but they look artificial because they just infuse so much color into them, it doesn't look right. Or, they do a lot of the blurring or the facial feature softening. I didn't notice a whole lot of that with the pictures on here, and I think that the skin tones are a little bit more true to life. They do seem a little bit on the light side, but they are pretty natural. So I do like the way that the selfies and the regular pictures turned out, and of course you can see the samples in here look pretty sharp. So at first glance, I'm pretty happy with it so far, and I'm gonna do some more testing, but overall, I think they did well. Of course, it doesn't have the telephoto lens. Here's a picture here where you can go in and see that I did zoom into like 8 times on these flags on the flagpole, and the detail is surprisingly good. So I don't want to say that it's a total wash, but it's not as good as a native real telephoto lens that you have on your phone like Samsung and the iPhone bring to the table. But for a digital one only, it's really not that bad. So it's better than I expected, really. All right, so that's all I have on my 72-hour review of the phone. I've been enjoying it quite a bit. It does have a few little quirks, of course, like the lack of facial recognition, having to open up the screen. It's kind of a pain in the butt if you want to make phone calls or send texts and things like that. But if you want, you can just use it as a singular phone. You don't have to have the dual screen, and you can pick up some cases out there that'll take care of you. I wish that LG would have gone ahead and thrown a case in there. It's nice that the case does work with the dual screen, so you don't have to worry about buying one. But if you want to use it on its own, you still need to pick up a case somewhere, and they're kind of limited. So it would have been nice if they went ahead and threw one in there. But for $799 for the standalone phone, or $899 with the dual screen, I really think that it's a nice investment. I don't think you're going to be missing out. If you don't care for facial recognition, that's going to be great. Most people who are not techies like me are not even going to care that it doesn't have QuadHD Plus, because the screen looks really, really good. It's crisp, it's sharp, it has great detail, and the contrast is phenomenal. I mean, LG has been making TVs for a long time. They make good displays too. So I think that it's a solid phone. I think that, of course, there are some areas that could improve. The software hasn't been updated since February 1st, which we're in April now. So that's something that LG is kind of known for. They're not the greatest with updating their software, but hopefully they'll get better with that. The native experience is good. It does have fully integrated swipe gestures for Android 10, which I like a lot. Swipe up, swipe back, all that great stuff. So they made some significant strides and improvements here. I'll be curious to see if we do get another G model later this year, or what they do with their standard phone. But for this and the dual screen implementation, I think that they did a pretty good job. So that's all I've got on the LG V60 with my 72-hour review. I'm still going to be working towards a full review to release and cover all of the bases much more in depth, but hopefully this has been helpful for you. And if you enjoyed the video, like I said in the beginning, please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates on the latest videos. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you guys next time.